It is difficult to comprehend how one can awaken in the morning, enjoy each other's company, and proceed to work, only to subsequently engage in infidelity and irreparably damage the marital bond in a matter of hours. Cheating is arguably the most insidious occurrence that can transpire within a marriage, and the most distressing aspect is that it can affect anyone, regardless of their circumstances. Upon waking, there were no indications of distress. The alarm was set to ring at 5 o'clock. At 6 a.m., my wife Diana pulled me back into bed when I attempted to rise. She kissed me and embraced me. Even after 25 years, she remained physically attractive, and I desired to engage in sexual intimacy with her. After that, she proceeded to prepare coffee while I was showering. I then made breakfast while she was showering. Over the meal, we discussed our plans for the day. Diana proposed a meal of meatloaf and baked potatoes for dinner. The suggestion was appealing, and I planned to procure fresh French bread and perhaps a pecan pie from the bakery. In response, Diana playfully suggested that I was being overly indulgent. I assured her that I had no intention of spoiling anyone else. As we walked hand in hand to the garage, our lips met in a kiss. Before beginning our day at work, we parted ways, each going our separate ways. An incident occurred earlier in the morning, around 11 a.m. My superior, Harry, requested my presence in his office. There is a developing situation in St. Louis. Baker was found with Smithers and his wife. As a result, Baker is currently incarcerated, while Smithers is hospitalized. This leaves the office without a manager. I regret to inform you of this at such short notice, but you are required to catch the 220 flight to St. Louis and assume control of the office. The duration of your tenure is uncertain. It will depend on the severity of the situation between Baker and Smithers. If the conflict is severe, Baker may be incarcerated for an extended period, and Smithers may be hospitalized for a considerable length of time. Even if they are released from custody soon, it is unlikely that they will be able to collaborate effectively. I will have to consider the matter carefully, but it seems inevitable that one of them will have to leave. It seems inevitable that one of them will have to go. I am not yet sure which one. I will need more information before deciding. It appears straightforward to me. Smithers crossed the line by getting involved with Baker's wife. He should have anticipated Baker's reaction if he ever found out. I cannot confirm if Baker actually caught Smithers with his wife or if Smithers I am unaware of any culpability on his part. The secretary informed me of this over the telephone. It is possible that further details may emerge once I am in a position to investigate. I attempted to contact Diana to provide an update, but the secretary stated that she was engaged in a meeting. I promised to call back later and then proceeded to pack. Upon my return, I observed that Diana's vehicle was parked in the driveway, which struck me as unusual. Given that she was supposed to be in a meeting upon entering the living room, I confirmed that she was indeed in a meeting, although not the type I had anticipated based on what her secretary had informed me. A path of discarded clothing scattered on the floor caught my attention, leading from the couch to the staircase. Among them were men's garments, including a pair of trousers. Upon retrieving the trousers from the bottom of the stairs, I discovered a wallet nestled in one of the back pockets. Upon inspecting the contents, I learned the name Stanton North from the driver's license. I then placed the wallet into my pocket and proceeded to scan the room, where I spotted a sport coat draped over the back of an armchair. I then proceeded to investigate further. I discovered a checkbook, which I also pocketed, as I ascended the stairs. As I reached the top, I heard sounds emanating from the bedroom. I proceeded with haste, and upon entering the room, I observed that my wife had been unfaithful to me for an extended period of time in our bedroom. Her actions were accompanied by highly insulting language. As I proceeded towards the closet, I was nearly at the door when Stanton North became aware of my presence and halted abruptly. Diana was seated with her eyes closed, seemingly at a loss for words when her companion abruptly ceased his actions. I continued, "Do not stop. I am almost at the door." North then became aware of my presence and exclaimed, "Oh God no," attempting to disengage from the situation. "North, I will be brief," I stated, as I entered the dressing room and began packing my belongings. "I will then leave you to your activities." As I retrieved socks and underwear from the dresser and placed them in my suitcase, I stood with my back to them. However, their voices could still be heard. Diana's voice was pleading, "Get away from me." North's voice was inaudible, but it seemed to express frustration. As I turned to retrieve a bag of clothes from the closet, I observed North emerging from the bedroom and Diana attempting to conceal herself from view. She uttered a series of phrases, including, "What are you doing, Frank? Why are you packing?" and provided vague explanations, such as, "It's not what you think, Frank. I can explain." Despite her objections, I proceeded with my task of packing my belongings. Diana's requests for a discussion were ignored in light of the sound of the front door slamming, which prompted speculation about North's whereabouts. Given that Diana's car was the only one in the driveway, it was assumed that he must have accompanied her. Diana's calls for a conversation were similarly ignored, with the focus shifting to the packing of belongings. Diana's insistence that an explanation be provided was also disregarded. The exit from the house was made without. Since entering the bedroom, I had uttered a single word and instructed them not to halt on my account as I made my way to my car. Diana was shouting, "Wait, Frank. Don't leave. Please talk to me." As I opened my car door, I scanned the surroundings but found no trace of Stanton. North perhaps was concealed somewhere, observing and waiting to return upon seeing me drive. Diana was running at a considerable pace down the front walkway and was about to grasp the passenger side door handle when I began to move away from the curb. It was a fortunate circumstance that I was able to reach the airport without causing harm to myself or to anyone else. My mind was not focused on the task of driving. How did it happen? Why did it happen? I would have been prepared to wager a considerable sum that Diana and I was reflecting on our life together and could not identify any indication that such an event was even a remote possibility. How could she have behaved in such a way in the morning and then engaged in what I just witnessed? Diane and I crossed paths when my father received a promotion and our family was relocated. The relocation was challenging for me, as I was separated from the friends I had grown up with and attended school with. I was thrust into a new school where I didn't know anyone. During lunchtime, I found myself sitting alone at a table in the cafeteria, feeling sorry for myself. At that moment, the most stunning girl I had ever seen approached me. She sat down at the table and said, "Hey there, new kid," extending her hand across the table. She introduced herself as Diane. It took me a moment to realize she was offering her hand in friendship. I shook her hand and replied, "Hello, Diane. I'm Frank. Where are you from?" She inquired about my background. We spent the remainder of the lunch period getting acquainted. Diane joined me at my table because she understood what I was going through. She had experienced a similar situation the previous year. By the time the bell rang, we had made plans for her to give me a tour of the town for 6 weeks. We had a serious relationship. We behaved like typical teenagers. As a hormonally driven young man, I naturally wanted. Diane expressed a desire to take our relationship to a new level, but she resisted. She was firm in her promise to her mother to marry as a virgin. Fortunately, for the sake of my peace of mind, she decided to break that promise on her 18th birthday. After this significant event, we had a serious conversation. I expressed a desire to marry her, but on the condition that I wait until I graduate from college. In contrast, she wanted to get married immediately and was unhappy that I chose to wait. Discussing this issue with my mother led to. Despite my initial assumption that my mother was somewhat conservative, she proposed an unexpected plan. She suggested that Ed move in with her and live together until he graduated. I questioned the feasibility of this plan, citing financial problems. My intention was to ensure financial stability, as I could not imagine supporting my wife and attending school at the same time. My mother reassured me by pointing out that my college tuition fund was large enough to cover the cost of renting a small off-campus space. She proposed that I might have to work part-time to pay for groceries, but it was a possibility. I discussed the matter further with Diane, and after a thorough examination of the options, we both agreed to take on part-time employment. We sought employment opportunities to facilitate the realization of this plan. We located a modest apartment that aligned with my financial constraints. However, communicating this development to her parents proved challenging. Her mother expressed disbelief that Diane had not upheld her commitment to remain a virgin. She wept and sobbed, while Diane's father hurled insults. He responded with a combination of both genuine and fabricated objections. He explicitly prohibited Diane and me from continuing our relationship and demanded that she cease all contact. Diane motioned for me to wait in the vehicle, and after 10 minutes, she emerged with 2 suitcases. She did not disclose the details of what had transpired after I departed. However, it took 3 years. Subsequently, I became the exemplary partner and was praised by her parents. However, the damage was already done, and I merely tolerated them. Eventually, Diane forgave them, and they integrated into our lives. They were wonderful grandparents to our 3 children, but my tolerance remained for years. As the children grew and ventured into their own lives, they would no longer have to endure the pain of divorced parents. I arrived at the airport ahead of schedule, completed the check-in process, and proceeded to the gate. I proceeded to one of the numerous coffee shops within the terminal to await the boarding announcement for my flight. I retrieved North's wallet and checkbook and began to peruse their contents. I tucked the items behind his driver's license, which also contained a card labeled "Emergency Information." This card detailed North's blood type and other pertinent details. However, what immediately drew my attention was the section containing his emergency contact information. This section listed all of North as his contact and identified this individual as his wife. It also provided a contact number. I proceeded to dial the number on my cell phone. "Hello?" the voice on the other end of the line inquired. "Is this Mrs. North? This is Frank Bello. I am contacting you regarding a regrettable incident involving your husband and my wife. I believe you should be informed of the situation. I am sorry to hear you find this call amusing. However, I must inform you that the events in question did occur. I am aware that my wife and I have a strong relationship. Therefore, I am surprised to hear you suggest otherwise. I am not joking, and I am not making this up. I am being entirely truthful. I am sorry to hear you doubt my sincerity. However, I am not the one who would betray a relationship. The plan is as follows: upon his return home tonight, inquire as to whether he is acquainted with Diane Bello. Then, request to see his wallet and checkbook. He will be unable to comply because I have them. I took them from his clothes after discovering them on my living room floor when I returned home early. Currently, they are in my possession. I am currently at the airport, awaiting a flight to St. Louis. Upon my return, I will gladly deliver the items in question to you in person. I must inquire as to the sincerity of your proposition. When do you anticipate your return? I am currently uncertain as to the duration of my absence, as I am filling in for an individual who is indisposed. I will remain in this position until such a time as they are able to resume their duties. Might I inquire as to the possibility of your return? Please send the wallet and checkbook to me via mail. I am aware that I could do so, but I feel compelled to inform you in advance that your husband's wallet contains $87. After observing the events that transpired in my bedroom, I am compelled to seek solace in a drink, and your husband will be responsible for the associated costs. There may be some remaining funds, but I am unable to confirm this. Please send it to my office. She provided the address and I recorded it. She then added, "If you can send it overnight, I'll reimburse you." I was able to accommodate that request. My flight is now boarding, so I must take my leave. North, I was fortunate to avoid a significant issue initially. My plan was to leave his wallet and I had placed the credit cards on the bathroom counter in the hope that whoever discovered them would engage in a spending spree. However, contacting his wife had a significant impact on my plans. I had hoped that she would make his life difficult. My phone had been ringing continuously since I left the house, mostly from Diane, so I ignored it. As I exited the coffee shop, my phone rang once more. I initially assumed it was Diane, but upon glancing at the screen, I saw that it was actually a call from the office. I returned the call and Harry answered. "Frank, you need to call home. Diane just called me frantic because she can't reach you. There's a reason for that." I attempted to avoid her calls when I returned home to pack. She was not alone and was engaging in inappropriate behavior. I will speak with her when I return. By then, I may have cooled off enough to avoid violence. It would be beneficial to instruct the receptionist not to put her calls through, after ensuring that the day's activities proceeded without incident in the office, with any immediate concerns addressed. My initial task was to proceed to the post office to send Mrs. Smithers with her husband's wallet and checkbook. I included my contact information in the event she had any questions. Once that task was completed, I contacted the police to inquire about Baker's whereabouts and to determine if I could visit him. Upon seeing Baker, he appeared to be in relatively good condition, aside from some bruised nipples and a broken finger. He had not undergone a bail hearing, as his authorities were awaiting updates from the hospital regarding Smithers' condition to determine whether he would be charged. I conveyed the charges to Harry and inquired of Baker for his account. The narrative was one with which I was already familiar. Baker had returned to his residence during his lunch break to retrieve an item he had forgotten the previous morning. Upon his return, he discovered Smithers engaged in an illicit affair with his wife. Baker inflicted injuries on Smithers while his wife called 911, stating that her husband posed a threat. Police arrived on the scene, and Smithers was hospitalized. Baker was subsequently arrested. My next destination was the hospital, where I was supposed to visit Smithers. He had sustained numerous fractures and was experiencing issues with his dignity. He informed me that it was not my fault that she attacked me first, so I was justified in defending myself. I am single and enjoy female companionship, as do many men. If anyone is to blame, it is Baker. Had he provided her with the care and attention she needed, she would not have sought out conflict. I had no sympathy for him. I contacted Harry, informed him of the events that had transpired and advised him to relocate Smithers from the office, unless there were grounds for his dismissal. I pledged to conduct a comprehensive investigation into the official cases to ascertain any information that might be useful to Harry. Baker's hearing was scheduled for the following day, and the bail amount was set at $250. He was only able to secure the requisite funds by pledging his residence as collateral. However, his wife was unwilling to provide her consent, resulting in his continued incarceration until such time as his father and brother could intervene. At 9:30 a.m., North contacted me. She informed me that upon her husband's return home, she confronted him about his acquaintance with Diane Bellows. His complexion drained as he denied any such acquaintance. However, when pressed further, he hesitantly affirmed his uncertainty. Al then requested his wallet and checkbook. He sheepishly admitted to having left them on his desk at work. He quickly diverted the conversation, inquiring about dinner. He was aware of the impending situation. The extent of his predicament remains unknown to him. He awaits further revelation when I confront him again tomorrow. Any insight into the duration of their affair is currently unavailable. What about your wife's perspective? I am currently unaware of this information. I have not exchanged words with her since discovering them in the bedroom. I will not do so until I return home. When you do speak with her, please give me a call. I would like to cross-reference their accounts. We will do so. I am eager to hear both sides. During the day, I received numerous calls from Diane, but I chose not to answer any of them. Harry must have informed her of my location in St. Louis, and she probably obtained the office number from the help desk. Dixie, our receptionist, informed me about a call on the third line, which turned out to belong to Diane. What do you want, Diane? We need to talk. Frank, I need to make it. It is evident that your perception of events is inaccurate. I am currently disinclined to engage in further discussion. I am still at the stage where I intend to take action against you and then pursue your partner with lethal force. He is not my partner. I request that you cease these communications. Diane, I will address this matter when I return home. I advise you not to contact me before that time. In the afternoon, Baker's father informed me that bail had been posted and that Baker would be released. Upon hearing the news the following morning, I experienced a sense of regret. As long as Baker remained incarcerated and Smithers remained hospitalized, I was spared the obligation of returning home to face Diane. Instead, I proceeded to dine and imbibe at the North establishment, returning to my room at approximately 7 p.m. The telephone rang, and as only Harry and Alls North had my number, I answered. After exchanging greetings, Alls North informed me of recent developments. When Smithers arrived home, I inquired about the matter. He once again inquired about the whereabouts of his wallet and checkbook. He claimed that they were missing from his office when he arrived. He then proceeded to blame someone from the night cleaning crew, stating that he would file a complaint the following morning. I found this response to be somewhat amusing, as I could not fathom how long he intended to avoid the matter. I decided to put an end to it. I confronted him about his deception and made it clear that he was aware of my suspicions when I brought up your wife and then requested his wallet and checkbook. I was able to discern the truth by using deductive reasoning. He was aware of my suspicions and yet he denied any knowledge of the matter. This infuriated me, so I took his wallet and checkbook out of my purse and threw them at him. I informed him of how I obtained them and mentioned that I had called his office and discovered that he worked with the woman he had claimed not to know. I even provided a false account, stating that when he returned from St. Louis, he would show me the photos. Prior to their realization of your presence, you captured the incident on your cellular camera. How did you respond to this development? He eventually acknowledged his actions and exhibited a profound emotional response, pleading for forgiveness and asserting that this was an isolated instance of infidelity. He attributed his inability to resist to the persistent advances of a woman who was eager for his affection, claiming that your wife's pursuit of him for months made it challenging to resist. It is regrettable that I was not more explicit in my initial account. I was headed in another direction when I encountered them. I did have a camera on my cell phone, but I did not think to use it. Do you believe his explanation that she pursued him? It is possible that she would not be the first to do so. Was it truly just a one-time occurrence? The assertion that the infidelity was the result of a temporal lapse is plausible, however, the claim that it was his sole act of infidelity is demonstrably false. Based on my observations, there have been at least 3 instances where he was unfaithful, and I have been informed of additional instances by other individuals. I did not inquire about these instances because I was not interested in confirming their veracity. You have suggested that his assertion about Diane's pursuit could be accurate and that she was not solely responsible for his infidelity. You were the first to suggest that Stan is adept at this particular activity. Some women are intrigued to ascertain whether this is true when they hear about it. A week ago, I would never have imagined that Diane would engage in such an act. However, that was before I caught her and your husband together. I must now take my leave, but I will inform you of any further developments. I would like to hear her account of the incident when you return home and speak with her. I will not forget at 11, the following morning, I received a telephone call from Ray Baker, who informed me that he had been released on bail from jail. He explained that he required the remainder of that day and the following day to attend to personal matters. His wife had obtained a restraining order against him, and he was obliged to arrange temporary accommodation while also coordinating with the court. To gain access to his house for the purpose of retrieving his belongings, he stated that he would be returning to the office on Thursday. Subsequently, I contacted Harry's to provide an update on the situation. Additionally, I informed him that during my investigation at the office, I had discovered discrepancies in Smithers' expense reports, which could potentially justify his termination. I informed him that I would be returning home on Thursday evening and would require a day off on Friday to attend to personal matters. I would be returning to work on Monday morning. I was able to successfully navigate the following 2 days without any significant issues. By Thursday morning, Ray had returned to work and was up to speed on the latest developments. I inquired about his situation at home, as I was going through a similar experience. He explained that the restraining order only mandates that I stay 500 feet away from her. I can enter the house whenever she is not present. If she refuses to leave when I want to enter, I have to involve someone from the court. Therefore, I waited until she went to work. Subsequently, my brother and I proceeded to retrieve the requisite items. I am disinclined to return, as I am currently experiencing considerable frustration. He continued, I am perplexed by her rationale. She obtained the order, but that is the extent of it. She did not access the bank accounts. I emptied them yesterday. I interjected, I was under the impression that this state operated on a no-fault basis, meaning assets are. He clarified that, in the case of a divorce, the assets are typically split equally. However, he is not pursuing that route. He is simply walking away from the situation. If she wants a divorce, she will have to bear the financial burden. By the time she files for divorce, our assets will be minimal. We took out a second mortgage on the house to renovate the basement. Therefore, there is no equity there. The money I withdrew from the bank will be spent. I can argue that I needed it for my new living arrangements after she barred me from the house. I also need to call Harry to update my insurance and other paperwork. Did she explain her actions to you? I have not had any communication with her since the police took me in. I do not intend to speak with her. I have withdrawn the funds from the bank and will be spending them. I can argue that I needed them for my new living arrangements after she barred me from the house. Furthermore, I need to call Harry to update my insurance and other paperwork. Did she explain her actions to you? I have not had any communication with her since the police took me in, and I do not intend to speak with her. The rationale behind her actions is inconsequential. What is of consequence is that she committed them. I elected to rest well for the night before facing Diane at home. Consequently, I contacted the airline and booked a morning flight. Upon waking up, I felt refreshed and enjoyed a hearty breakfast before catching the airport shuttle. I arrived back home in Denver by 11 o'clock. Afterwards, I visited the bank and withdrew funds from our savings account. I also redeemed 5 out of 9 certificates of deposit from the deposit box and transferred all the funds to our checking account. Diane was still at work upon my return, leaving me alone until 6 o'clock. Utilizing this time, I contacted the credit card companies to obtain payoff balances and subsequently canceled all but 5 cards. I retained the American Express card, which is primarily used for business expenses, along with 2 other cards in my name and assigned 2 to Diane's name. Following this, I returned to the bank to arrange wire transfers for settling the card balances using the funds in our checking account. With these tasks completed, I allocated half of the remaining checking balance. Additionally, I opened a new checking account in my name and secured another safe deposit box under my name. I placed 2 of the remaining 4 CDs inside before heading back home. I had converted one of the children's bedrooms into a home office and den and maintained the others as spare rooms for their occasional visits. I selected one of these spare bedrooms, adjacent to the den, for myself after moving all my belongings. By the time Diane returned home, I was fully settled in. I heard Diane entered the room and called out for me, "Frank, Frank, where are you?" I ignored her. I listened as she moved through the house, searching for me. Eventually, she made her way upstairs, and I kept my back turned as she entered. "Frank, please, we need to talk." I remained silent. The necessity for financial adjustments was questioned by Diane, who indicated that her actions had prompted such a necessity. In response, I requested that she proceed to the kitchen table and take a seat. I would join her shortly thereafter. After Diane had departed, I proceeded to gather the papers I had been working on, selecting the necessary ones, and follow her downstairs to the kitchen table. I began by stating that, while I was away, I had ample time to contemplate the best course of action. Ultimately, I decided to take no action. When I conveyed this message, I noticed a brief moment of relief on her face, but it swiftly dissipated. A fleeting expression of relief crossed her face, but it quickly vanished as I continued, stating that I intend to have minimal or no involvement with her. In fact, I see no point in spending money on divorce attorneys, particularly given my age and the unlikelihood of another marriage in my future. Consequently, I have no need for a change in marital status. If she desires a divorce, she is free to pursue it at her own expense. However, for the time being, there will be some adjustments. I proceeded to delineate the financial arrangements regarding credit cards, savings, certificates of deposit, and our joint checking account. You may retain the original safety deposit box, but I recommend opening your own checking and savings accounts. We will maintain the joint account for household expenses. Do you understand thus far? However, why are you not playing dumb, Diane? I will now provide you with a sheet of paper which lists the essential costs of running the household. The mortgage, utilities, phone, gas, water, sewage, taxes, and insurance will be paid from this account. Going forward, we will be considered roommates. Each month, you will deposit half of the total amount listed here into the household account. We will share the house with the exception of 2 rooms. You will have the master bedroom, and I will take Carol's old room. Why are you moving into Carol's room? After witnessing what was happening in that room, it is clear that there is no chance I will be staying there sleeping on the floor. We must discuss the implications of your observation of the woman engaging in sexual activities on the bed. Your assumption that I was engaging in those activities with Frank is inaccurate. I did, however, engage in physical intimacy with Frank on our bed. My actions were driven by curiosity and not emotional connection. I have always loved Frank and always will. My feelings for Stan were purely lustful. The incident in question was prompted by a desire to satisfy my curiosity. Had you not returned home, I would not have become aware of the situation and it would not have occurred again. However, Diane, I did return home and I am fully aware of what happened. This awareness changes the nature of the situation. You have betrayed my trust, which means I am no longer able to rely on you. From now on, every word you utter will be subject to scrutiny to discern the truth from falsehood. You claim to love me, but your actions demonstrate otherwise. It is difficult to reconcile the concept of love with actions that betray trust and disrespect. It is challenging to accept that love can exist alongside the introduction of a third party into a relationship and the sharing of a marital bed. How much respect was shown to me when I was offered the leftovers of another man, despite the possibility of intimacy that night? I am no longer able to trust you, Diane. You claim this was a one-time mistake, but I am unable to believe you. While the incident in question is to be regarded as a one-time occurrence, it is nevertheless difficult to accept your assurances without further evidence of your credibility. It is possible that this was the 10th such occurrence, with plans for more already in place. Even if the truth were to emerge, you would still have betrayed me. You have violated the vows we took as a couple. What could have driven you to jeopardize our marriage? What could have prompted you to risk everything for a mere glance, a casual observation about the size of his instrument? It is difficult to comprehend what could have motivated you to be so interested in that particular detail. Some of the girls in the office, me with him, they would frequently discuss the positive aspects of their relationship. I was aware of these conversations but did not pay much attention until he began to express interest in me. Even then, it took me some time to consider the implications of this interest. Are you suggesting that he was the first to demonstrate signs of interest? I believe that may be true, but I did not initially attach much significance to it. I appreciate attention, and it is not uncommon for women of my age to value the attention of a younger man. The attention of a man 10 years my junior significantly enhanced myself, had lunch with him on a couple of occasions and danced with him at office parties on a couple of occasions. It was during the dance that I considered the stories I had heard on several occasions. I felt him move closer to me and he appeared to be quite attractive. The more I reflected on these stories, the more curious I became. He was the only man I had ever had a close relationship with. I wondered what another man might be like, especially one who was rumored to be as well endowed as Stan. Stan, as he was known, persisted in pursuing me, and I continued to ponder the matter until, finally, my curiosity got the better of me. You have suggested that the other women in the office were discussing Stan's prowess in bed. How many women were involved? 7, it seems. Stan was therefore involved with 7 women, according to their claims. He was, it appears, quite promiscuous. It is plausible to hypothesize that an individual with a high number of sexual partners may be prone to contracting sexually transmitted infections, STIs. If this were the case, it is likely that the women in question would have been infected by him. Furthermore, it is probable that information regarding this would have spread rapidly within the office environment. It is possible to have an STI without experiencing any symptoms. In some cases, it can take several months before symptoms manifest. Therefore, it would be advisable for you to consider undergoing testing. The underlying reason for this discussion is that, in my case, there were no emotional connections or feelings of love between us. I received a considerable amount of sympathy. This is not the impression I gained when I entered the room. You are aware that I derive pleasure from intimacy, Frank. You are also aware of how passionate I can be in such situations with you. Therefore, I made a slight noise. I did not have any particular feelings for Stan. It was an error on my part, Frank. It was a significant error, and I am deeply remorseful. I can assure you that it will not happen again. I love you, Frankie. You are aware that it is unwise to abandon a 25-year relationship due to a single misstep. I am not giving up on anything, Diana. You are the one who prompted by introducing another male into our domicile and bedroom, Diana jeopardized the stability of our relationship. I arose from the kitchen table and proceeded to the office, where I immersed myself in paperwork. As a light sleeper, I was awakened approximately an hour after retiring to bed by the sound of the bedroom door opening. Diana entered the room quietly and closed the door softly behind her. Given the season, I was lying on top of a blanket. Diana leaned over me and initiated physical contact, which she had previously indicated she desired. To regain my favor, however, I surprised her by pushing her away. "Leave me alone. I am not interested in being someone's leftover." She left the room in tears. Eventually, after about 20 minutes, I fell asleep again, and no one bothered me for the rest of the night. The next morning, when I came downstairs after a shower, Diana was making coffee in the kitchen. I greeted her with an evasive grunt and ignored her until the coffee was ready. I filled my travel mug and went to work, hardly talking to her later around 10. I informed North of my findings, which included the discovery of 7 other girls. This information corroborates her initial account. It is plausible that your husband was a charismatic figure in the workplace. However, prior to my intervention, I was inclined to believe her statements, even if they involved implausible claims. For instance, she asserted that the sun was rising in the west. However, now I am uncertain about the veracity of her statements. It is possible that she is attempting to minimize the significance of the incident. To minimize the significance of the incident by making me believe it was not a significant event, she has effectively destroyed my trust in her. Consequently, I now view her statements with skepticism. Have you reached a decision regarding the future of the marriage? It is clear that it is over, but if there is to be a divorce, she will have to initiate it immediately. My plan is simply to continue living together as roommates. I am not willing to jeopardize my financial stability due to her inability to maintain discretion. Have you determined your subsequent actions? I am still contemplating my options. Let's maintain communication. Frank, I have ensured that I am not at home when Diane wakes up. I am seeking alternative activities until late at night to avoid returning home. Despite Diane's expectation of my company, I deliberately disregarded her. When the next weekend arrived, she attempted to join me in bed once more, but I firmly instructed her to stay away and leave me alone. Frank, I implore you, do not do this to me. I love you and I want to be with you. Diane pleaded. I do not want you, Diane. You have caused irreparable damage. I responded. Oh God, Frank. It was a mistake, just once. I have not communicated with him since his departure. I implore you to reconsider and offer me another opportunity. I am aware that my actions were misguided and I express my sincerest regret. I assure you that such an incident will not recur. Diane pleaded with Frank, emphasizing her regret and the uncertainty surrounding the situation. She suggested that there might be other instances of infidelity, including the possibility of ongoing encounters with the 3rd or 4th lover or even the 10th. Diane and I have lost our trust in you. We are unable to believe that you will be truthful with us again. I have explained, Frank. There must be a way to mend things between us. I will do anything, absolutely anything, to make this work. Diane pleaded desperately. I am sorry, Diane, but there is no chance for us to reconcile because I do not want to reconcile. Seeing you with North, wrapped around him, and hearing you beg for more has killed any feelings I had for you. I had previously held positive sentiments towards you, but I must now acknowledge the necessity of a change in perspective. You are now at liberty to pursue your desires, although not within the confines of this house. This residence is a neutral domain. Take your partners elsewhere, and I shall do the same. My partners and I are unable to sustain a romantic relationship without the opportunity for sexual intimacy. I have encountered prospects, but I have remained faithful to you because of our vows. You have broken yours, which has released me from mine. At the very least, I shall not bring my affairs here, where you can observe her. I observed her and was able to discern her thoughts. It was evident that she believed that by sharing the house and spending time together, she could gradually reintegrate her and you into my life. That was precisely what I wanted her to believe, so I resolved to burden her with a responsibility. The only reason I am agreeing to this arrangement is because I am not keen on enriching lawyers through a divorce. I am not willing to relinquish the comforts of my home to reside in an apartment, as I would lose access to my garage, workshop, and patio. You have two options, Diana. Either you must adapt to the new situation or you must leave. If you choose the latter, you can either move out or assume responsibility for the house payments and expenses while I find another place to live. You claim to love me, genuinely, then, here is your opportunity to demonstrate your sincerity. Either accept cohabitation or take the house, thereby depriving me of my garage, workshop and patio, just as you previously deprived me of my wife. The decision is yours. Is there any room for negotiation? I failed to see how. Diane remained silent for a moment, then uttered the final blow. What are your plans for the photos, Frank? The photos are. The images captured on the cell phone. Had she not spoken to North since he stormed out of the house, how then did she know about the cell phone photos? This narrative was concocted by all and relayed to her husband days after I caught Diane and North in our bedroom. I could no longer trust anything Diane said. I was unable to bring myself to harm her physically and eject her from the house. Imposing a silent treatment on her would inflict mental torture, which was the optimal outcome given the circumstances. I was aware that she still held romantic feelings for me, clinging to the possibility of reconciliation. However, this was highly unlikely, as I had witnessed her with North. The longer she persisted in her hope, the more intense my emotional response would become. Once my vengeance against Diane was settled, I shifted my focus to Stanton North. Despite being caught by me and his wife, North continued to engage in extramarital affairs with 5 women over the course of 3 weeks. This confirmed my suspicions. The private investigators monitoring his activities observed that he had not interacted with Diane, but that he was involved with 2 of her colleagues. One of these was Mary Ellen Bingham, who had a husband who worked the afternoon shift every Tuesday and Thursday after work. North would visit Mary Ellen at her home on Sunflower Way, staying for 2 hours before leaving. Upon observing the time, it became evident that if he adhered to his given the established routine, it was estimated that North would be leaving the house in approximately 10 minutes. I had parked a block away and was standing across the street from the Bingham residence when I decided to approach it. I proceeded to circle around behind the garage. Upon arrival, I donned latex gloves and a ski mask. It was observed that Mary Ellen had a 3-car garage. After North's visit, he drove into the garage, parked, and quickly closed the door. This was done in a way that would prevent the neighbors from seeing him. I did not discuss Mary Ellen's guest with her. I was concerned that the rumors might reach Mary Ellen's husband. I used a small tire iron to break the lock on the back door of the garage. I then waited for North to appear. When the door leading to the house opened, North went outside but was met by Mary Ellen, who watched him leave. North convulsed on the garage floor from the discharge of a 50. I then proceeded to deploy a 0.000-volt stun gun, before Mary Ellen had the opportunity to express her shock. I spoke in what I hoped was not a very serious tone, stating that if she made a sound or contacted the authorities, her husband would discover everything. I advised her that it would be in her best interests to return inside and act as though nothing was happening out here. I made it clear that I had no intention of killing him, but that she should be aware that another husband he had betrayed would undoubtedly seek retribution. She recoiled and shut the door. Mary Ellen recognized me from the gatherings. Diane had taken me to, but I relied on the ski mask and altered voice to conceal my identity from her. I couldn't risk her calling the police, so I had to act quickly. As soon as he was out of his pants, I took my revenge. He was proud of his possessions, wasn't he? Well, he paid dearly for that. I did a lot of damage to his instrument. I landed a couple more punches before grabbing my wallet and checkbook and quickly running away. There were no sirens. As I drove away, I heard sirens. It seemed that Mary Ellen had not alerted the authorities. I reflected on my actions, uncertain of the extent of the damage caused by the cattle prod. I derived pleasure from each scream North emitted. I never learned the outcome of my encounter with Mary Ellen. Had she managed to remove North unnoticed, leaving her husband in the dark, or had she sought medical assistance from North, leading to a challenging explanation with her husband still wearing the device? I donned latex gloves and placed my wallet and checkbook in a prepared package, which I sent to all at her office. No note was attached, and I would deny any knowledge of the package's contents. However, when her husband, in pain, returns home and discovers the package containing his belongings, she will likely suspect me of sending it. 3 weeks after my encounter with North, I received a call from Al. "Are you free for lunch?" he asked. "I haven't made any plans," I replied. "Why do you ask?" "I think it's time for us to meet face to face," he said. "How about noon at the Leo?" "I'll be the red." The woman with hair was looking at every man who entered the room in order to determine which one was you. This method of identification is ineffective. I did not see her looking at the faces of the men in the room, but I was able to identify her as the only redhead in the room because she was sitting alone. It was a foolish decision on the part of North to be unfaithful to her. She was very attractive. I approached her table. "Mrs. North, Frank, it has been a long time since you have called me Mrs. North." I took a seat across from her. I inquired as to what prompted you to extend an invitation for lunch. My objective was to gain a comprehensive understanding of the individual who has been causing significant disruption in my life. I am the one who has been adversely affected. How, then, did you facilitate my realization of the truth? I had suspected the nature of his actions but had hoped that they were not as detrimental as they appeared to be. Consequently, despite my reservations, I offered him another opportunity, at your insistence. However, you subsequently deprived him of his most significant asset. I must admit that I am struggling to comprehend the situation. Undeniably, Stan possesses the qualities of a reliable provider and he was a decent father, but what made him exceptional was his skill in bed. Pay attention to the past tense. Am I responsible for removing this? How do you not play innocent, Frank? We both know who hurt him so badly. I have no idea what you're talking about. Of course you don't want to, but since then, no matter what you do to him, he can't work. Don't pretend you don't understand what I mean. Your signature technique is sending wallets by mail. At that moment, the waitress approached to take our order. All of us requested a salad and iced tea. I discreetly assessed her. It was evident that her husband was foolish to have stayed home. She was undoubtedly stunning. Al's proved to be quite perceptive. She inquired, "Well, what? What am I? Satisfactory. What are you referring to?" "Well, what you didn't expect me to notice you checking me out just now." I was caught off guard, and I knew it. So, I simply grinned. I responded, "Who, me?" "Yes, you." I hoped she would be pleased with what she saw because the real purpose of this gathering was to offer it to her. I am unsure of what expression I had on my face when she spoke, but she continued, "I am a very attractive girl, and since you took the toy away from me, I think it's only fair that you take on his role." I was caught off guard and did not know what to say. She chuckled and remarked, "I bet you didn't expect." Frank, I must admit that I had not considered this possibility. It is, however, a fair assumption that you have deprived me of a partner, and therefore it would seem reasonable for you to take his place. Furthermore, I am unsure that there is a more prudent way of getting back at your wife and my husband. While the offer is tempting, I am unsure that it is wise to give Diana a reason to file for divorce, as it could disrupt the situation that I am currently in. "You are not going to divorce her," I explained my actions. She smiled and said, "You're evil, aren't you? But don't worry, I don't plan on spreading this information widely. If Stan does not regain the right to use his equipment, I will divorce him. I do not want him to have grounds for a counterclaim." "Are you serious?" That is precisely how my affair with Al's North began. This has been going on for over a year now, and there is no end in sight. Her husband's instrument is still not working. Doctors say there is no physical cause, so it is most likely a psychological problem. Al plans to remain with him until the end of the year. If he is still unable to perform, he will be dismissed. Diana is not currently dating anyone, but she is aware that I am. She is aware of my romantic involvement, but she is unsure of my partner's identity. The realization that I am with someone else is distressing for her, but she is holding on in the hope of a positive outcome. However, this is unlikely to occur. I could not have asked for a more satisfying form of revenge.